I know we kind of lost you for a while.
No, that's fine. That looks good. You know, one thing is, you know, lack of human communication. That's what I've noticed in the spring semester. I feel like students just wanted more of a human communication.
Oh, we're supposed to be back in the big room.
No, you guys, we're all back in the main room. I'm sorry. It's pretty.
We didn't know.
It's kind of like whiplash here.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm going to remove my slides here. And so that if you have your camera on, you can go ahead and turn your camera on. And you're going to want to, we're all back in the main room. So where Alice, we're all together. So I think, Jamie, a couple of you are going to need to mute your mics. I hear a lot of background noise. Duke, Jamie, and Sandy. Thank you. So I would encourage you to have the Google Doc up on the screen. And by the way, right now, everyone, before the end of today, you're going to need to save it, right? So if you can figure that out quickly right now, how to download and save it, then go ahead and do that. But I don't want that to distract you also from the activity we're going to do. So just before you sign out and leave today, make sure you download and save this, okay? But I want everyone to be engaged right now. So what we're going to do now is we have all of our cool ideas on this Google Doc. We won't necessarily, I can have Google Doc and people's faces. Okay, then that's fine. Whatever works for you best, Donna, that's fine. But we're going to have volunteers from different groups present, and we're not going to get through all of them. So I guess the way I want to frame this is, which of the 5 do you guys really want to talk about now for the next 10 minutes? Group 1, 2, 3, or 5? What would be your picks? You could type them in chat right now and just say 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, which ones? Which ones do you really want to interrogate? We have a vote for 1. We have a vote for 4. Oh, okay, now you guys are picking. We need some tiebreakers. 1. Okay. So we got enough for 1. So group 1, we're going to go with you guys first. So please share some, if you can have a volunteer to unmute and share some key takeaways or additional questions or things you struggled with or cool findings that you had. Just not summarizing the whole thing, some just cool parts to it. So group number 1, if you can have a volunteer.
This is Ruth Brandvik. I'll go ahead and talk. One of the major benefits that I think all of us agreed on was that it allows time in class for the application of materials with the professor there to help them when they struggle with it. You know, normal classrooms, they go home and do homework and we can't correct them on it until they're turning it in for a grade. Whereas here in this sort of model classroom, we can assist them with the application part of the knowledge, which in my opinion and in my field, the application is actually the meat of the learning process, less of the lecture, and it's more about the application of it. And so being there to help them and guide them through the application, we thought was the major benefit of it. Some of the cons, you know, I think in any sort of classroom model, teaching, whatever, you're always going to have students that don't do the work. Although, you know, if all of your content is online, that puts a greater onus on the students who do the work than those who don't do the work, especially if they're trying to come together in groups to apply the knowledge. If only half of them come with the knowledge, that can make those classroom sessions maybe not as substantial. And then the other thing that we talked about as a con was, you know, depending on how you're sourcing the material, that can sometimes take longer. Or, you know, depending on how you're sourcing it, or if you're creating it, or maybe you have a very special topic that you're trying to do, sometimes sourcing that material or creating the material does take additional prep work than just doing a typical lecture. It also can highlight some of the disparities that students face with technology, because if someone is at home trying to access large videos, they may not have an internet package that can handle that traffic. And so those were some of the cons that we talked about.
Okay. Do people who weren't in group 1, do you want to ask a group 1 a question? Because one question I do have a question. For me, I still didn't hear from some of your summaries. How is that unique? sound like a lot of your pros and cons would be even with the standard as well. So I almost wondered, how could you tease out the fact that these are micro lectures and they're, some of those may not be as much of a con is what I'm saying. So like, I see you guys root students may feel lost if they don't read the material. Well, that's actually one reason for a micro lecture, that they're much more summarized and entertaining, and they're not as dense,
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to, as a whole, there's always going to be students that do the work and students that don't. And so I just think that's anytime that you have any kind of classroom work that requires students to come together, I think that's always going to be a con. One of the pros we thought about was that having the learning, like the content offline, and then students coming in to talk or work in small groups, actually I thought allows for a greater accountability on those group projects, because instead of students coming to you and saying so and so isn't doing their part of the work, I as a professor have no way of judging that whatsoever, right? Yeah. Whereas if I'm watching them in the group and I can see that Billy Joe is not contributing, I can automatically have a conversation like, why are you not speaking up? And are they just shy, or maybe they just didn't do the work? So I think some of the cons definitely can be found in any sort of teaching method.
Yeah.
But some of them felt like it was maybe a little more highlighted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that. So Donna, I see your comment about schooling online. Does that mean you want to talk about number 5 now? Or I guess I wasn't understanding the context for that comment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm leery of putting a whole lot of time into planning a flipped class right now, because I think I don't see how with the numbers there's any way we aren't going to be fully online by October.
So, but be specific about which type of flip you mean, because that's why I didn't want to talk about traditional flip today. I think that is a waste of everybody's time. I'm 100% agree with you. Right. Yeah. So I was
kind of an argument for 4 or 5 or whichever one was fully online. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, under normal circumstances, it's a lot of workload to do a traditional flip, and that's why I wanted us to talk about all these alternatives. So yeah, let's now dig into some of the COVID pros. Let's talk about some of the COVID pros for a number of these flips. Any group, which ones, if it's 4 or 5, or what were some of the COVID pros that, like Donna's mentioning, you guys discovered? Please just jump in with your
I was in number 2.
Oh, wait. Sorry, Sandy. Jamie just raised her hand. I should have asked her hand. And then Jamie, and then Sandy. Yep. Go ahead, Jamie. Sorry. Jamie? Jamie, I don't know if you're muted. I can't see you.
Hi. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, I was definitely talking while muted, which, is a challenge. I was part of group 3, and we got to talking about this because I actually have done a lot of the partial flip in my traditional face-to-face classroom in the past. I do a lot of like group work and, having them get together and prepare something that they're going to present, that kind of thing. And I found, as I've been thinking about how to do this in a socially distanced classroom, I really can't. They can't cluster up. If they're 6 feet apart, they're going to be yelling at each other across the room. I can only have 11 of them in the room at the same time. So I think, given our circumstances with COVID, the ability to use groups like we just did here in Collaborate or Teams or, whichever technology we're using is actually going to be a lot more safe, and it's going to be a lot more functional right now. It's sad to say it, but it is the reality that if we want them to have, somewhat intimate conversations, we can't do it in a traditional classroom right now with social distancing.
So you're arguing for a backwards flip?
I guess I am. Yes.
Right. So whoever's group leader, you need to put on your pro, right? Well, I guess you guys says minimize his backwards flip is really that's what Jamie's saying. Do your active learning through synchronous online, like what we're doing right now, right? So can someone, whoever's
what I'm saying,
your group, maybe emphasize that? Now, I will say, one of Colin's webinars, he did a webinar which you can just watch or you can sign up for on using mobile technology in face-to-face classrooms for social distancing, and that was specifically, Jamie, why we had him develop that webinar was because we knew that you won't be able to do all your active learning with your students in class. So the way to, it's not impossible, the way is to use mobile technology. But you know, that comes with a lot of other challenges. So yeah, so it's not impossible, but that's it. So, oh, Donna, you were in that session. So, Jamie, I think your mic has a lot of background noise again. Yep. Donna, do you want to share something from that session? You see that sort of being...
No, I'm just too brain dead today. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
It's been a long day.
Okay. So we're right at time, but I want to, do you guys want to, I know someone else had to check out, but if a couple of you want to stay, we can have another group just present really quickly about theirs. Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy, you did have your question. I'm sorry. We'll go to you first.
No, I don't mind if you don't go to me, but mine kind of is our group too, because
go for it.
Some of these, and I
what
was
number are you? Please clarify what number you are.
I'm sorry, we were number 2, and that's the irregular. Do it sometimes and not. But one of the cons is that certain students are so. I would think young people would be more flexible. You always think of old people like us would be more set in our ways, but some of the students really freak when you when it's not regular and they don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And I flipped a classroom once and I lived to regret it because they hated it because it wasn't what they were used to. And I think that's
so I actually was going to have that as a learning outcome to talk to you guys about in the training, but as you see, we're already pressed for time. So I guess I'll sum up then with sharing another best practice for flipped learning, which is exactly what you're talking about, Sandy. You need to be transparent with your students about this pedagogy. So just like our deans and our provosts are saying and our department heads that we now need to kind of explain to students, are we going to be doing high flex? Are we going to be doing hybrid? Are we going to be? That's exactly what the literature on flipped learning talks about, which is that you need to kind of talk with your students about this pedagogy because exactly, Sandy, they're confused or it's very different than what they've done before. So Colin actually in one of his webinars had people kind of draft a sample statement to describe kind of their pedagogy. I think it was in his asynchronous synchronous webinar, and that's what I would say exactly for flipped. If you're going to do a flip, then use our little description chart here and describe how you're going to flip and when and why. And at least, Sandy, that then you don't get as much student pushback. They still might not like it because it requires active learning. It requires hard thinking, right? It asks a lot of them, like I asked a lot of you guys even in this first hour, right? So Sandy, that is your challenge is what people have talked about with it. So yeah, great. So I know we're at time. Donna asked if people are okay if she downloads the chat. I'm okay with that. If everyone's okay with that, if you're not, please say no in the chat. Yes, you have a question, Donna?
Actually said chart. I was making sure people were through adding stuff to the chart.
Oh, the chart.
Before I download it. Sorry.
You know what? You did say chart, and I read it as chat because I'm brain dead. So how about that? Yes, everyone, please, like Donna's doing, download the chart, save it. I will also upload the PowerPoint into BlazeView 101. And I hope you are leaving with a lot more questions, a lot more excitement about maybe how you might use flipped learning and alternative models. So I thanks everyone for coming. I'll also upload the recording as well.
And thank you back, because even when we bumble around a little bit in these, maybe it'll make us feel better in the semester when it happens.
Well, that's exactly the thing. Every little new idea we get now, we may put in practice, 3 months from now. So, yep. So, okay, thanks, guys. I'm going to just hang tight, but I will end the recording. And everyone have a good day.